Well, world leaders have been mourning the death of Pope Francis. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni saying that Pope Francis has returned to the Father's home. It is deeply sad news because a great man, she writes, has left us. And as we were speaking, Javier Milei, president of Pope Francis's home country, Argentina, saying this: in spite of differences that today seem minor, to have known him in his goodness and wisdom was a true honor for me. And Britain's King Charles said that through his work and care for both people and planet, Pope Francis profoundly touched the lives of so many. And Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan saying Pope Francis was not only a respected statesman, but a spiritual leader who placed great importance on dialogue between different faith groups. And Kenya's President William Ruto saying the Pope exemplified servant leadership through his humility, his unwavering commitment to inclusivity and justice, and his deep compassion for the poor and the vulnerable. And from the Philippines, President Ferdinand Marcos, Pope Francis led not only with wisdom, but with a heart open to all, especially the poor and the forgotten. All right, I want to bring in now our correspondent in Washington, Benjamin Alvarez Gruber. Benjamin, it's good to see you. What have been the reactions in the United States to the death of Pope Francis?
There have been several reactions, one of them by President Trump, who called Pope Francis a good man that loved the world. He announced that he would sign an executive order that was already sent out, ordering all the federal buildings to put the flags, federal and state flags, at half-mast in honor of Pope Francis. So that also applies to U.S. embassies across the world. And we also heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who released a statement saying that he and his wife, Janet, and I quote, unite in prayer with Catholics worldwide for the repose of the pontiff's soul and for this period of transition for the Catholic Church. May he rest in peace.
And just before the Pope's final public appearance, Vice President J.D. Vance, he met the Pope at the Pope's private lodgings. I mean, they had, we know, a few very public disagreements. So was this final meeting, was it rather unusual?
It was rather unusual because, as you just said, J.D. Vance was among the last people to see and speak to him hours before his death. And also because, as we just heard there from the colleague talking about Pope Francis, and also how he was really getting into a lot of political topics. There was a letter that he sent out to bishops here in the United States in February where he criticized the mass deportation plans. He called it a major crisis that was damaging, he said, the dignity of many men and women. And J.D. Vance acknowledged the criticism but said that he would continue to defend his views, something that he also did not address, J.D. Vance, during an appearance at the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C. But he still said that there are many things where they disagreed. So that's quite something that there was this public disagreement, and that Vice President J.D. Vance actually met the Pope only a few hours before his death.
Yeah. There was this landmark moment in the history of this papacy, a first for a pope, and that is when Pope Francis addressed the U.S. Congress back in 2015. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. It was in 2015 he addressed this joint session of Congress, the first pope to do so. He started talking directly to the lawmakers that gathered, speaking about the responsibility as members of Congress to enable this country, he said, by the legislative activity to grow as a nation. He said, you are the face of its people, their representatives. He also told them to defend and preserve the dignity of fellow citizens. He called for a response of hope, of healing, of peace, of justice to the challenges that the world is currently facing. He spoke about democracy, he spoke about refugees, telling them to treat others with the same passion and a compassion with which everyone wants to be treated. He also went even further, saying that politics must truly rely to be a service of the human people, adding that it cannot be a slave to the economy and to finance. And speaking at the US Capitol, that drew a significant crowd of members of Congress and staff to the House, he also once again called for the global abolition of the death penalty. So it will be something that will be remembered here, as you say, one of the landmark moments of his tenure. They will definitely be remembered here, also with this visit here in the US Capitol back in 2015.
DW's Benjamin Alvarez Gruber reporting tonight from Washington, D.C. Benjamin, thank you.
Now we can cross to Rome, where journalist Alina Trabattoni is standing by for us. Alina, what's the atmosphere like in Rome today?
Gerald, well, the atmosphere here is, shock. Everyone's in shock. Everyone's distraught. I have to remind you that this year is a Jubilee year for the Vatican. So that happens every 25 years. And one of the characteristics of a Jubilee year is that millions of pilgrims come in from all four corners of the world. So it's coincided with one of the most important Catholic celebrations within a Jubilee year. So you can imagine the number of pilgrims, of devout Catholics that were present on St. Peter's Square yesterday in the last public apparition of Pope Francis. And I've been talking to people in and around St. Peter's Square, some of whom actually attended the Mass yesterday. And I have to say, they just don't quite know what to say, because I think everyone, despite Pope Francis's extremely frail physical condition yesterday, everyone really found reassurance from his having driven through the square in the Pope Mobile for the first time in many months, accompanied by his loyal group of Vatican Swiss guards, who are the army that's tasked with guarding the Pope always with his life in the centuries. So the idea had been, what the day left with yesterday in everyone's minds was, well, yes, he's frail, he's in a complicated medical situation, but he's on his way to recovery. So it's just complete shock. And people are also looking forward, because, Pope Francis was a revolutionary pope in his own right. He very much changed the Vatican in as much as you can across a 13-year pontificate. A lot of what he did and changed will remain, obviously. But as one person who attended yesterday's Mass told me, well, let's hope that the next pope is as of wide vision and as supportive and as much of a man in the street as Pope Francis was.
Now we're looking at 9 days of mourning before the procedures to find a new pope come into action. In these 9 days of mourning, what can we expect there? What's happening there?
Well, the Vatican has already announced that the body will lie in state in the Basilica starting from Wednesday this week. And that will mean that all the Catholics, all the believers, and those that are not Catholic but want to pay their respects, pay their tributes to Pope Francis, will go to the Basilica and, offer a prayer, pay homage to the man and to the Pope, as it were, because it has to be remembered that Pope Francis is not just a pope, he's also a sovereign leader in his own right, because the Vatican is the world's smallest sovereign state, albeit in a geographically peculiar place, because it's embedded within the capital city of Italy, within Rome. So we can expect a large flow of pilgrims, of devout Catholics, and people generally going to St. Peter's and Basilica to pay their respects in the lead up to the funeral. The funeral will take place within 9 days of his passing away. We don't have the date yet. Everyone is on standby. Obviously, the world's media is descending in Rome, because it's one of the most followed and most felt events that will be taking place for a long time here. And so everyone is waiting for the date, the announcement of the funeral. And of course, we're also hearing cardinals are starting to come in for the conclave.
The journalist Alina Trabattoni there reporting from Rome for us. Thank you very much, Alina.
Well, journalist Seema Gupta is in Rome. She joins me from there now. Seema, good to see you. We understand that Italy's Prime Minister Meloni has said, and I'm quoting here, "We are saying goodbye to a great man and a great shepherd." How have they been reacting to the news of the passing of this Pope?
Well, I think it's just been really a reaction of shock. It may come as a surprise. This was an 88-year-old man who had spent 5 weeks in hospital, in which there were at least 2 occasions that the doctor said that he risked to die. So considering that, why was it a shock? It was a shock because just a day ago on Easter Sunday, we saw him on that balcony at St. Peter's Basilica. Yes, he spoke, his voice, there was a bit of struggle in speaking, and someone else had to deliver the main message, the Urbi et Orbi, that is done every Easter and every Christmas. But he blessed the faithful, and then he did the surprise thing where he got on an open-top Pope-mobile and drove through the square and right down Via Conciliazione that you can see behind me, getting up close and personal to the faithful. And that really was a hallmark of Pope Francis. He wanted to be close to the faithful, close to the people. So bearing that in mind, many Italians I've spoken to have said they're simply shocked. They can't believe that they saw the images on Sunday and this morning to wake up to this news. One person said to me, perhaps he overdid it on Sunday. Who knows? But clearly he was determined to be close to the Catholics, the faithful gathered, even to the last moment.
Yeah. Seema, the Pope, he was cast or has been cast as a progressive, a reforming pontiff, and he also encountered opposition within the church to his reforms. I'm wondering, were his reforms, this reform agenda, was it popular with the Italian people?
Well, with Italians, it was like with those who follow those kinds of progressive ideas, they were quite happy that he mentioned fairly early on in his papacy the idea of who am I to judge, and when it comes to the LGBTQ community, that everyone should be welcome to the church. He drew the line, however, at gay marriage or gay adoption. So in that respect, he definitely followed closely church teachings. He also was against abortion, against euthanasia. Those kinds of things were very much in line with conservative Catholics, even here in Italy. But the fact that he always said the church had to be open to everyone. And I think in that respect, many Italians felt that he was a true shepherd, perhaps in the words of Giorgia Meloni. Here in Italy, as we saw in that report, flags flying in half-mast. Clearly, they are gearing up now in terms of the security and managing the pilgrims as well, the movement of people as we head into a funeral and eventually the conclave.
And what do we know, Seema, about funeral arrangements moving forward?
Well, what we know from this evening itself is that around 8 p.m. local time, his body will be moved into a coffin. And now the Pope was very clear. He actually made certain stipulations about how his funeral would be. He wanted to be in a simple coffin, a coffin that is wood and with a zinc encasing inside. He also said he wanted to be not for the coffin to be placed on a pedestal, but at a more regular height. And he said specifically that he wanted to be buried at St. Mary the Major or Santa Maria Maggiore Basilica. This is one of the 4 main basilicas here in Rome, and he has requested that he be buried there and not at St. Peter's Basilica. It's been a long time since popes have done that. Most popes have been buried there, but he made the stipulation that he wanted that. When the funeral will happen, we'll still have to wait and see. The stipulation is you need to wait at least some 6 to 7 days before that's in place, but the Vatican has yet to announce it.
And Seema, briefly, what about preparations for electing the next Pope? What do we know?
Well, that usually it takes another couple of weeks before that happens. We will have the cardinals being called back here to St. Peter, to the Vatican, obviously to attend the funeral, and then they will stay on for the actual conclave. Now, the conclave is a secret vote. The cardinals, we know that there are about 135 or so that qualify, as in you have to be below the age of 80 to participate. And it is a secret conclave. They will be cut off from their phones, from access to the internet or newspapers. And the voting process will happen inside the Sistine Chapel. But of course, right now, thoughts really on the fact that the Vatican and the world, the 1.4 billion Catholics in the world, have lost their leader, Pope Francis.
Journalist Seema Gupta with the latest tonight from Rome. Seema, as always, thank you.